Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 152, and for this one, we head to Bellagio. We play some 5-10, get into some big hands. There are all-ins, bluffs, hero calls. It's got everything. But before we get started, I have one quick announcement. I am working on my own signature hoodie. This is actually it right here. It's got the jiggities, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be available on my merch site in a couple of weeks, and it'll be available in either pullover like this one or zip up, and there will be a couple different color options as well. So it's a joint effort with Counterfeit, and they have some really cool merchandise. I'll link down below in the description box to their site. If you use the promo code BRAD, you'll get 10% off there, so check that out. This is like super soft material, and it's really thick, so I love it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's time to head to the Strip for another late night poker session. We're at Bellagio, which has been our home lately. There are a couple of games of 5-10 going. I buy in for $1,500, then I take my seat in the must move. We're playing 4 and 5 handed while waiting to get into the main game, so there's lots of action, and it's important to run good. We get off to a slow start before picking up Queen 10 offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun opens at 30. It's only 20 more for me. I call. We're heads up. The flop comes Jack 6-4 with 2 clubs. We have 1 over and some backdoor draws. I check to the pre-flop raiser. He down bets to 20. There are quite a few good cards for us, including clubs, kings, queens, 10s, 9s or 8s. I call one time. The turn is the queen of clubs, giving us top pair and the 10 high flush draw to go along with it. I check. No fear from the opponent. He bets 60. I didn't hit top pair to fold it. I call, not exactly knowing where I'm at. The river is the 5 of diamonds. It likely didn't change anything. I check. Check back wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Not this time. The young Euro I'm facing bets 150. If this were an older player that I perceive to be tight, this would be a fold. This guy seems capable of mixing in plenty of bluffs. Also, the last time I faced a river bet, I hit the fold button too hard and it jammed on me. Now it no longer works, and it's not available as an option. I call. The opponent only has ace-3. Unfortunately, they're both black and clover shaped. Good for the nut flush. Though I'm in a short-handed game with top pair, I really only have a bluff catcher once the opponent bets 3 streets. It's exploitable if you're regularly folding in these spots. It's still probably going to save you money in the long run, particularly in smaller games, because people just aren't bluffing for large amounts on the river all that often. We're stuck 600. Not to worry, we pick up this hand that I know there's a nickname for, but for some reason I can't remember what it is. I raised to 30 from under the gun. It's 4-handed at the moment, so under the gun is the same as the cutoff. The button calls, the big blind also calls. We go 3 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out Queen 10-5 with 2 clubs. The big blind takes it upon himself to lead for 50. I've seen this type of move from recreational players quite a bit, where they'll lead with some kind of draw or second pair to see where they're at. I'm certainly not letting my hand go just yet. I call. I might be best, and there are a number of turns that'll give me decent draws. The button folds. It's heads up. The 7 of diamonds comes out. The opponent slows down and checks. This makes me feel much better about my hand. I check back for pot control. The river is another 7. All the draws miss. The big blind checks once more. I don't think that he'll have a queen very often. I bet 110 to target hands containing a 10 or potentially worse pocket pairs that I'm beating. The player thinks for a bit, then he calls. I do a terrific job of assessing the situation and getting maximum value out of myself because the big blind has Queen 4 offsuit. His kicker doesn't play. It doesn't matter. He wins the pot. Occasionally, I trust my instincts to go for thin value, and it doesn't work out, like now. Next, we've got 5-4 suited in the big blind. The cutoff opens to 30. The button calls. He's a new player. I call for 20 more. We're going 3 ways to the flop, out of position. Comes Queen 8-7 with 2 spades. We flop a humongous combo draw with flush and straight possibilities. I check to the pre-flop raiser. I may put in a check raise. There's no opportunity to do that though. Cutoff checks, then the button checks. The turn is the King of Hearts. It's a card that's good for the cutoff to rep if he wants to. He probably won't ever have King Queen or something better than 1 pair after he checks the flop. I check. The cutoff indeed wants to take a stab at it. He bets 50. The button calls. He shouldn't have better than 1 pair either, or he would have bet flop or raised turn. Since their ranges are mostly capped, I raised to 230. I play lots of 2-pair and set combinations the same way. You may remember in the previous vlog that I checked a set of 7s 3 times from out of position, including on the river when a king came out so that I could hopefully put in a check raise. Here I'm doing it as a semi-bluff. I'm mostly concerned about getting through the cutoff since there's a tiny chance that he could have a set of queens. That concern dissipates when the cutoff folds. The button is going through the options in his head regarding what he wants to do. Ultimately, he calls. Perhaps he has a king, maybe he has a better flush draw, and I actually don't want a spade to hit. The opponent only has 725 left in his stack. The river is the deuce of hearts. It's a complete blank. We brick everything. I'm now hoping that the opponent had a draw of some sort. It almost doesn't matter. If I fire again, I should get folds a huge percentage of the time. It's very unlikely that I'm up against a hand that's strong. I imagine that I'm up against air or something like King Jack. So I announce that I'm all in to put the player to the test. It should be extremely difficult for the button to make the call. He's thinking about it. Then he puts in a calling chip. Flip over 5 high. It's probably not going to be a winner. The button has Queen 8 suited. He flopped top 2 pair and somehow checked it back. It's a little shocking to me since I wouldn't even expect him to have called a pre-flop raise with it, and certainly wouldn't have expected him to give me in the cutoff a free card. I'm getting completely destroyed today, but I'm running into the absolute top of everyone's range based on the lines that they're taking. Some strange things are happening. I'm stuck 1900. I consider leaving because it's clearly not my day. I don't want to have to put together a vlog of me losing every hand, and I'm not a quitter, so I add on for 1300 more. There's no way this could go poorly. We get moved to the main game where I've got King Queen suited under the gun +1. I open to 30. The cutoff calls. The button is a good reg. He 3-bets to 130. It's going to be tough to get out of the hole by folding. I call for 100 more. The cutoff calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop, out of position. It's Jack 7-6 rainbow. Not a whole lot going on for our hand. I check. The cutoff checks. The button checks back. Maybe he has ace king or some other ace high hand. The turn is the 6 of hearts, giving us a flush draw. There's no reason for me to believe that my king high is good. Semi-bluffing worked out super well in the previous hand that we went over, so I do it again, this time for 230. I can reasonably have something like jacks, sevens, or some top pair type of hands. I'm mostly concerned about getting through the cutoff because he can have some of those hands as well. The button shouldn't even be 3-betting my early position raise with anything worse than queens, so his range is capped at 1 pair. The cutoff folds. Not much time goes by before the button folds as well. We finally win a decent sized pot this session. I almost forgot what it's like to see chips coming towards me. It's a good feeling. Hopefully we can keep it up. Here we pick up ace jack offsuit in the cutoff. The guy who beat me with queen 4 offsuit earlier opens a 40 in the hijack. He's a pretty wild dude. I call. We're heads up in position. The flop comes queen 10-9 with 2 spades. We've got an open ender with 1 over and a backdoor flush draw. Surprisingly, the opponent bets 130. It's more than a pot-sized bet. I know this guy doesn't like to fold. If I can hit a king, I might be able to stack him, especially if he's holding a different jack. I call. I've made no strong hands today. This would be a good time to change that. The turn is the 7 of diamonds. The hijack continues his story that he has a monster. He bets 200. That seems like a reasonable amount. I call once more. The river is the 4 of hearts. We brick again. The hijack bets 500. I can't call with ace high. I let it go. The fold button isn't actually jammed. I lied to all of you earlier. The hijack is a friendly player. He shows that he flopped top 2 with queen 10 offsuit. They're getting whatever they need. The supply of Bradley dollars is dangerously low. After adding on again, I pick up ace queen offsuit in the small blind. The hijack cutoff and button all limp in. I've got too good of a hand to allow this type of shenanigans to go on. I raised to 70. I'd like to either win with no flop or narrow it down to one opponent. The hijack, cutoff, and button call for 60 more. None of them wanted to raise, yet they're all fine with calling 70. I admire their tenacity. The flop comes king jack 8 rainbow. We have a gutter with 1 over. More importantly, this should be a much better flop for my range as the pre-flop aggressor than it is for the murderer's row limp callers. Typically, it's not a great idea to be bluffing into multiple opponents. Stuck me, feels okay about it in this situation though. I bet 170. That's too much for the hijack. He folds. Cutoff may have a piece of the board. He calls. The button folds. It's heads up. I've got a card in mind that I'd like to hit. The visualization techniques that I've been practicing day and night for years pay off huge as the dealer puts out the 10 of hearts on the turn. We have the absolute nuts. I bet 400. The cutoff doesn't seem to have much of a hand after all. He crushes my dreams of stacking him, and he folds. Still a nice sized pot that we win after tumultuous several hours of play. Drilling a gutter has me feeling rejuvenated. I'm pumped and ready to recover the rest of the missing Bradley dollars. 5:15 in the morning. I'm down 1935 and just won with that ace queen hand. Feel like it's a turning point. I'm gonna stay until I get it all back. Here we're dealt king 6 suited in the big blind. The small blind limps in. There's no one else that has cards. It's all up to me to punish him. I raise to 40. The opponent calls as I suspected he might. We're heads up in position. The flop comes 9-8-5, all spades, cool color, bad suit. We both check. The turn is the 7 of clubs. We have a straight. Small blind checks. I bet 50 for value. The small blind has something that he likes. He calls. The river is another 5. Small blind checks. There are a lot of different hands that have me beat, including full house combos, flushes, and higher straights. I know this guy doesn't like folding though. It's the same opponent that I took myself to Value Town against when he had Queen 4 at the must move table. My gut is telling me that I have him beat. I bet 140 to make it look like I'm bluffing, and I want him to fold. The plan works out. The small blind calls. I show the straight. The small blind shows that he called with 10-5 of diamonds. He river trips on a dangerous board and paid me off. It's great to take someone else to Value Town, otherwise it's extremely lonely and quite depressing taking myself there. A long time goes by before we pick up Jack 10 offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun raises to 30. The hijack calls. The button wants to get involved. He calls. It's now pretty early in the morning and he's gone off the rails a little bit. He's been calling raises and bluffing with all kinds of completely random hands. The small blind calls. I don't want to miss it. I call for 20 more. We're going 5 ways to the flop. It's 9-8-5 with 2 diamonds. We've got an open ender with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. The small blind checks. I check. The pre-flop raiser is playing cautiously. He checks. The hijack checks. The action's on the button. He bets 100. The small blind folds. I call. Under the gun folds. The hijack also folds. It's heads up. The turn is the 4 diamonds. We pick up the flush draw. I check. The button slows down and checks back. I imagine he doesn't have a flush himself. The river is a jack. It's a weird card because it gives me a pair, but my kicker isn't that strong, and it improves the number of holdings that my opponent could potentially have. I check. The button isn't checking. He assembles some chips and fires for 340. It's about a pot-sized bet. I'm in a very interesting situation. There are reasons for both folding and calling. The argument for folding is that it's a large river bet from a guy who I know is playing almost any 2 cards. He could have connected in all kinds of ways by making sets, straights, or 2-pair by the river. I essentially only have a bluff catcher. I tried to bluff catch earlier today and it went poorly. I don't like to make the same mistake over and over on vlogs. People start making comments in the comment section. My mom reads them. I have to have long conversations with her explaining that those people are crazy. She's got to stop paying attention to them. It turns into a whole big deal. The argument for calling is that I've seen this guy bluff several times in previous hands. I brought my glove, designed specifically for catching bluffs. It's fun to use it. I checked 3 times, including on the river after the button check turn. My line looks really weak, so you'd think if the button wanted to get called, he'd bet something smaller. I have a diamond, a jack, and a 10, which means I have good removal against a variety of strong hands that he's representing. His bet feels fishy. If I call and I'm wrong, I'll be stuck 2,500, but I go with my gut. I call, and it turns out I'm right. The opponent isn't very happy. He says nice hand and rolls over Queen 6 offsuit. He flopped a gutter, turned a flush draw, bricked everything, and tried to push me off top pair. I'm too big of a monkey to lay down a pair. Luckily, our read on the situation was correct. Forget everything I said earlier about people not bluffing all that often with big bets on the river. We win our largest pot of the night. We're still down almost 1,500, but we're on the comeback trail. 7:30 in the morning when I pick up ace-jack of hearts onto the gun, I raise to 30. The player who tried to bluff us in the previous hand calls in the small blind. I imagine he's going to be playing wider than before, if that's even possible. We're heads up, and the small blind checks in the dark. The dealer puts out Jack 8-4 rainbow. We have top pair, top kicker against someone who isn't playing his A game. I bet 50. Usually I'd bet smaller, but I like to size up when I have a strong hand against somebody who checks in the dark because they tend to call lighter, thinking that I'm taking advantage of their dark check. This guy will probably be calling me light anyway. He indeed matches the bet. The turn is a 5. Small blind checks. It's scary facing someone that could have a lot of random holdings since we can never be sure that the card didn't just give him 2 pair or something stronger. Ace-jack is way too good of a hand to check back though. I bet 120. If he has me beat, it's unfortunate. If he doesn't, I want to get max value. The player calls. My instincts are telling me that he has a 1-pair hand. The river is the queen of hearts. We're downgraded. The small blind checks. Against a lot of people, I check back, thinking that most of the time I won't be able to get called by anything worse. I bet with 2nd pair earlier and got called by better. I can't help but feel stupid when that happens. In this case, the opponent would probably call with a variety of worst hands like King Jack, Jack 10, or potentially even a pair of 8s. I bet 160 for thin value. It's not that large of a bet because I want the small blind to be able to justify calling with some bad hands. The player's thinking about it. He eventually calls. I turn over the cards. The small blind freezes for a little while. He seems surprised to see what I bet on all 3 streets for value with. He turns his cards into the dealer face down. We never find out what he has. The pot is pushed in our direction. I'm getting tired. We don't get out of the big hole that we were in, but we get a good chunk of money back, and we get a little closer to the surface. Played for 6 hours. I lost 1250, and it is tough to see the sunlight at this point, but I felt like I was just kind of battling myself most of the session. I almost left after that 5-4 of spades hand, and I was down 2400 at the low point, so it feels great to get 1150 back. Feels a little bit like a win. Not too upset about it. I was trying to be patient, and I wasn't getting dealt too many good starting hands, and I wasn't in very many situations where I could bet for value, but glad to avoid a giant catastrophe, and I'm looking forward to putting together this video because I did have some fun hands there at the end, and then hope you guys enjoy it. If you did enjoy it, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps out the channel. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. Be on the lookout for the next video. It's gonna be one of my favorite ones to put together. I play 10-20 with a $20 big blind ante, and there's regularly a $40 straddle, so it's a massive game, and I do well in it, so I can't wait. And be sure to check out Counterfeit's website. I'll have a link down below in the description box, and if you use the promo code BRAD in all capital letters, then you'll get a 10% discount, so be sure to take advantage of that. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Good luck at the tables, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.